Well, welcome everyone for the fourth in our series of COSBOA Roundtable Communique podcasts, and the first one for 2022, proudly brought to you by the Commonwealth Bank. It's an opportunity to seek out the inner workings of the Council of Small Business Organisations Australia, which is, of course, the peak body for small business advocacy. Each month we have an open round table where we bring together our members, the professional associations, which collectively represent over 800,000 small businesses, plus key stakeholders like the ATO, Treasury, heads of government and regulatory bodies to discuss what's happening in the small business ecosystem. So in these podcasts, we'll chat you through what was discussed by our members, presented to us by government departments, and how we're advocating for small businesses out there in every way we can. So I'd like to welcome once again Matthew Addison, our chair of COSBOA and an expert in all things small business as well. Thanks for joining us again, Matthew.
Thanks, Alexi. Good to be here. And as I'm saying, may 2022 emerge into being great. We're 1/12 of the year in, and I'm actually not enjoying 2022 just yet. So I'm looking forward to emerge to be a different space.
That's exactly right. I mean, like what we're hearing from our members is when are things going to settle down? How are we going to navigate this new normal? How can we continue to support our members? And what are the new trends or issues that are emerging out of this space? And I think from my perspective, what we've seen is, as well as the ebbs and flows, the highs and the lows of the virus, we've also got our own ebbs and flows of issues. So we had the issue of obviously lockdowns, massive across the country, the issues associated with support and unpacking that for all of our small business members. Then we had supply chain issues coming out around the Christmas period. Then we had worker shortages. And I guess there's two schools of thought. Has everything settled down now, or are we waiting for the next wave? And that's kind of something that I wanted to unpack with you today.
Alexi, I think you're right. I think the last 2 months was not expected, that the type of December we would have, or from mid-December onwards, when the current variant of COVID would hit us the way it did. And what did we find? We had uncertainty. We had the confidence factors fall through the floor. So therefore, people weren't out and about. They weren't spending. They weren't buying. And as you've called it, we've all sat there in a little bit of uncertainty of knowing how to respond. The confusion around travel pre and post Christmas, and whether you had to get tested or not get tested, or stand in a queue for a very long period of time. And I feel like small business have ridden that wave, but we're sitting here, start of February, going, we're actually not sure where we are on the wave and what even the next 4 weeks looks like. So is our workforce, and this is what we discussed at the roundtable, and we heard from our members at the roundtable, businesses are having workers off. They're off because they've either caught COVID or they're close contacts, and it is impacting small business. We don't have workers, and many reported over the Christmas break going to tourist towns or coastal towns and 1 in 3 shops being shut, just because the signs on the door read, we can't get staff, so we've got to shut. That worker, it's interesting, Alexi, you and I have sat in a couple of meetings now where some areas of government and others are reflecting, we think workers are getting back to work. But our members only a week ago were saying we're not seeing it. Is that how you heard it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in a lot of cases, the key stakeholders that we talk to at COSBOA are saying, has it settled down? How's it all feeling from your perspective? And the response we're getting from our members is that it continues to be a big issue. It is possibly the wave is cresting, but the problem is that we see those problems being alleviated in big business first. Them being able to report that they've got maybe a 10 to 15% worker shortage now, but we're not hearing that from small business or from our members. It continues to be 30 or 40%. The tail for small business is longer because not only do you have to manage the workers coming back, but also the rostering. And that takes time to I guess, get your head around again. And it is small, and it is trying to figure out when people can come back and constantly monitor that. It is time consuming. It is exhausting. And in amongst that, small business is still very much worried about their employees and concerned about their health and whether or not they can come back and what sort of capacity they'll be able to come back in. They don't have the depth of staff to manage rosters as effectively. They don't have the HR departments, and they don't have, I guess, there's a lot of lack of skills that we always talk about in many industries as well, where if something is not available to you, there's no stopgap. There's not another person you can employ or bring in a contractor. Those people simply don't exist. So it is a compounding issue, but I do feel that it's cresting. I can't say for sure from what our members are telling us that it's over. Just a bit like with the supply chain issues as well. It's not over because we're still hearing stories of 5- and 6-fold freight charges for those who are involved with international freight more than others. So everything's got a long tail, and that's what makes it so difficult for businesses to plan.
So before we get to the positives, because there has been some positives come out of the month, just building on that supply chain one, I think you're right, Alexi, but what our members are telling us and what our government contacts are telling us is to keep watch on supply of different things over the next era. It might be it's not your core product, but maybe it's your packaging that might be hard to get hold of. So there's a real watch and see, watch and monitor, watch and look for alternatives in terms of some of your key essential consumables or your key essential sales products. So that supply chain, I think, is going to be here for a little while, Alexi.
And as we know, it's not necessarily about the goods that you put on the shelf that you sell. It's very much about the components of the products and services that you offer as well. We're hearing from hairdressing and beauty that a lot of the things that they utilise in their services are simply not available, and they're having to pivot and change and adapt. Now, that is one positive we can say small businesses can do, is they can adapt and change quickly. But under the circumstances and under the stress that they're under, that's another compounding effect of what we're seeing with this particular wave and what's next. So, Matthew, let's not bog down in the negatives. Let's talk about some positives and what we've heard and what our members are saying.
Alexi, as you're aware, it was great to see Tasmania government keep rolling some of its business support packages in place and respond to what Tasmania was, I nearly said embracing, but enduring in terms of COVID. South Australia, with its change, its government looked at some packages, but then we really had New South Wales come to actively consulting and then embracing a small business tailored support package. It is a short, sharp package at this point. It'll be reviewed for whether it needs to be extended, but really quite happy to see New South Wales come to the party with a package that will help small business survive their worker shortages, their enforced restricted trading hours or shut shop, and gives them a chance to at least sustain their existence. Victoria, we hear there are discussions about enhanced business support. The other good one, Alexi, just while I've got the floor from you, which is a bit of a miracle, but I'll keep talking. Commercial tenancy relief schemes, to have both Victoria and New South Wales extend their commercial tenancy schemes, slightly different dates in the middle of March, but to the middle of March. That's a good thing again for small business. And can I say, I think it's probably good for landlords because it causes a conversation and it causes some reality checks about where business is at, what rent they can afford, and gives us a date going forward for everybody to walk to.
And all of those things that you've described, Matthew, are actually relatable to what small businesses are going through now. It's pleasing to see those governments listen to the specific concerns and actually offer support for those specific needs right now. It's not a cut and paste job. It's actually adapting and evolving. So as long as those conversations continue, I'm interested to see what happens as WA emerges. And faces the reality that many other states have been facing. How will their small businesses thrive and survive? or what does that future look like? Even what do the dates look like at the moment? But we're hoping to be part of that conversation and looking forward to that those discussions to be able to support those governments as they handle the reopening. So we've obviously talked about some support measures. What other levers, in your opinion, can government possibly pull to support small businesses apart from those dollar figures, those dollar signs? We're hearing from federal government that there's few dollar signs available to small business in the future. So what do we call for if it's not monetary support?
And I think you and I have asked that at the roundtable and a couple of other roundtables and other environments since, Alexi, what's the silver bullet? And I think everybody's consensus is there isn't a single silver bullet. There's not even several silver bullets to do it. And even since our members roundtable, Alexi, I think the conversation shifted a little bit to go living with COVID for maybe the next 2 years. What are the structure things that need to be in place to support small business? So one that's been around for a while and we fully support is the instant asset write-off. So it's an encouragement for business of all sides to invest. They'll get an immediate tax deduction. There's a structural incentive and support to business. What else is it that can fit into the space? So Alexi and I have had a few discussions around incentives for workers to offer up more hours. But what is it? And please, listeners to this podcast, please shoot information into info@cosboa.org.au if you've got that silver bullet, because we would love to be an advocate for good structural changes, because I think we are living in a business environment that needs to look and feel a little bit different.
There's been some really good positives that have come out of COVID that have changed, reforms that have taken place that have made life easier for business. If we talk about the movement of logistics workers across borders, a little bit more recognition around licensing between states, and a really easy one, which is enabling telehealth for allied health professionals. There's been some good work both at the state and the federal government end, and I think that that's a space we wouldn't want to see any of those backpedal because they've been really positive. What can we do to build on that ease of doing business? And I'm glad you didn't say the R word, reform, because in my mind, there's reform and then there's too much change, which just means a whole lot of new things that small businesses need to do. And there's definitely a balance to be had there across what the regulators are doing and government as well. So I think that there's a lot of learnings from COVID that we can take moving forward, hopefully well into the future. But one of the big things that we've been talking about at COSBOA in all of our discussions is right now, small businesses are not in a position to take on any more compliance requirements, right? I mean, you as the head of the Institute of the Certified Bookkeepers would definitely vouch for the fact that there's still a lot of reg out there that takes a lot of time for small businesses and their advisors to unpack.
Yeah, spot on, Alexi. You fear an election cycle, you fear a budget in some senses, because we don't want brand new initiatives, and especially initiatives that are going to be brought in quickly to increase the burden on business. There's enough there at the moment. And Alexi, to your point, never let a crisis go to waste. We've had some really good initiatives to temporarily lower regulation, lower some of the steps so that it was easier to conduct business during the period of COVID. So if it was easier during a disaster, maybe it can stay easier in normal business. Do we need all of these regs and burdens turned back on? So there's some of the very valid questions that are being asked and are being discussed.
And another really big positive from COSBOA's perspective is it's great to see government doing good consultation at the industry level, bringing in more industries to get those perspectives and offering that up as well as the peak bodies such as ours, and communicating with them on lots of different topics and lots of different areas of policy. So let's hope that those doors stay open and those conversations continue irrespective of what happens with a budget or an election in the next few months. I think there's some really hard work and some good earnest listening going on, and a lot of times that listening actually changes into good policy as well. So we've talked a bit about where we are with the last few months and the waves that small businesses have gone through. In your mind, after talking to our members and listening to those roundtables, can we foresee the next 3 to 6 months? Do we think that if we've crested the wave of worker shortage problems, is there a way of seeing what's next? Do you have any indicator about what regulators, advisors, government and our members might need to be thinking about that's over the horizon?
I don't think I'm going to answer it the way you want me to, Alexi. No, I don't think we can see the 3 to 6 month view of everything on the table, and regulators and government might bring and support us. But think of small business. What do small business owners do? What do small business people? They work more, they invest more, they work harder to keep their business alive and survive and see what's over the horizon. So I think the, what's the word I'm looking for? Sustainability of business is due to small business owners and managers working really hard. I'm hoping that our infrastructure, our economy works in a way to support those business owners moving forward. I'm not sure that I've got a clear view of what I think the 3 month vision is right now. Alexi, have you got anything that you're alluding to?
Well, I think it's just about we might be in a phase where we start to be able to plan. Now that we've got a little bit of stability around what do support measures look like? What do lockdowns look like? Well, apparently they're not coming back, which is great. Have we got now a chance to sit down and assess? Does small business now have the opportunity to have a slight breathing room to look at their debt levels, to look at their successes, and actually take a step back and say, okay, this is what the next few months look like for me. Am I still a viable, thriving business? Do I need to take out a loan to deal with the other debt levels, or would I rather not do that? How do I spread that debt out over the next 6 to 12 months? I think this is an opportunity now where we can go, okay, this kind of looks a little bit like the new normal. Will we see small business owners start to make those big decisions about what their future looks like?
Yeah, look, good call. And your loans comment is spot on, Alexi. We still have the SME guarantee scheme in place for loans. That's here till June. It does open up that opportunity for small business to take advantage of another government infrastructure support mechanism, being those SME guaranteed loans. We're seeing in the lending data that the amount of lending by business in Australia is increasing. So the banks are lending more money. We also hear that sometimes that takes a little bit longer than it has been, and there's more questions and interrogation before the loans are necessarily approved. But I think your call out is right. Now, or in the next couple of months, is a good time to sit down and evaluate what does the next 6 to 12 to 18 months look like? What do we need in place? How do we build from here?
And it's quite often the time of year when small businesses do that, the beginning of the year, the Christmas period, and those fluctuations or seasonalities are finishing, and it's an opportunity to take a breather. Unfortunately, we've also got a lot of mental health issues, and this is a good opportunity, of course, to do the call out for Beyond Blue. If you haven't already sought help, New Access is an excellent program, and we highly recommend that for you to mention to your small business members that it's available there, and that funding has been extended, which is really pleasing. So now's that time to mentally, emotionally, physically take stock and see what the next 6 to 12 months looks like. And so I guess we do need to continue that conversation with government about the SME loan scheme, the support measures that are non-monetary, if you will, And looking forward to seeing what they come up with at the end of March for the budget. We'll be keeping a close eye on that, obviously, Matthew.
That's right, Alexi. I think there's enough on the agenda. No more new initiatives, please.
Yes, exactly. So lastly, I just wanted to do a quick song and dance about our summit, which is coming up in April, which is, of course, the 4th and 5th of April. Our members out there who haven't yet got your tickets, you've got that ability to buy your tickets, which is great. And the agenda is looking absolutely phenomenal. I can very pleasingly say that the super panel with all of the regulators is looking incredibly robust. It's going to be fantastic. I am, let me just put it out there, a little bit nervous about moderating this particular panel with such incredible big brains to moderate, but it's going to be a really interesting conference with a swathe of fantastic speakers. We've got Sally McManus locked in. We've got Julia Gillard. We've got Sandra Parker from the Fair Work Ombudsman's Office. We've got topics that are fabulous. And I must say that one of the real positives is that we don't have any sponsors on our panels. It's all about the content. It's all about the small business perspective. And that's what we're looking forward to delivering to everyone. Have you bought your ticket, Matthew?
I happen to be there, yes, Alexi. So,
just checking.
Look, I also think the timing is great, Alexi, that we will be post-budget, pre-election. It'll be a good time. We know we have interest from various ministers to be engaged as well and possibly be talking about exactly where they're at as we head for an election cycle. So encourage people to get involved in the summit.
Well, thanks, Matthew, for unpacking another fantastic COSBOA Roundtable. Guys, we'll be unpacking the next one with you, which will be our last one before the summit. And we look forward to seeing you all there at the National Small Business Summit. Thank you again to our sponsors, Commonwealth Bank, for providing us with the incentives to provide you with this excellent podcast series. You can check back on the YouTube channel and listen back on the other podcasts that we've done. Matthew, thank you once again for joining me.
Thanks, Alexi.
And we will see you all next month. Thanks, everyone.